emotional because that's how I get. And okay, there's a computer talking to me. Got it. Sorry. Thank you so much, Ali. I have to say that when this meeting started, it was right at the height of COVID, and I was living in South Florida where COVID was like bananas and there was all kinds of madness going on around me. And there still is, COVID's still crazy, but I am somebody who needs the solution. I was a very thirsty alcoholic, and I'm even thirstier for my relationship with God. And I have a sponsee who I believe is on this call, who, as soon as COVID started, I was involved with these different commitments going on in AA and everything, and it all stopped. And I need to hear the language of the heart. I need to hear one alcoholic communicating with another how you do it. Not how you drink, but how do you stay sober? How do you stay in fit emotional and spiritual condition? How do you continue to sponsor women and not get crazy? How do you continue to be a sponsee? That's the kind of alcoholic that I am. I need to be fed on a daily basis. And my sponsee put together this like spreadsheet of all like the best meetings to go to on Zoom. And this one came up and I was like, oh, Toronto, like that's pretty amazing. I've heard Toronto has great recovery. And on Tuesday, I would get done work. I was working from home. As soon as COVID started, we went to work from home. And I would make myself some dinner, or I would usually order dinner because I don't cook. But I would order dinner and I would eat and I would feed the body the way I was taught to do, because I would come and I would light a candle. And what I've been taught to do by the women in AA and the men in AA and just the people in AA is to always ask that I hear his message. I have to always ask for that. I have to prepare my mind and my body when I'm about to hear this message that's going to save my life. So that's what I would do. I would eat some food. I would get physically fed. I would light my candle. I built this little sanctuary in my old home in Delray Beach, Florida, which is another thing I was taught to do. I was taught to prepare a room for God where I'm going to sit and I'm going to sit quietly when in doubt, and I'm going to pay attention to this power. And I would sit in my creative sanctuary and I would light my candle and I would ask God, let me just hear your message tonight. Let me not get judgmental, whatever's going on. And whether I was disturbed, whether I was in fear, whether I was in the sunlight of the spirit, I would sit and I would, the first thing I would do is I would turn Zoom on because I would get nervous that it wasn't going to work. And then I would like go about and go in my house, and then I would have the audio on, and I'm so selfish and self-centered and everything's all about me that I would hear all these people start coming on and thanking Ali. And I was like, oh, you're welcome. And even though, I knew that it was Ali H, I still heard my name and I was like, oh, everybody's like, Ali, you're so amazing. And thank you so much for your service. And I'm like, yeah, like you're welcome. And I just felt so welcome because we had the same name and we spelled the same way. And that's, that worked for me for a little bit. Was okay. I feel like I belong here. But I would sit and I would hear the most amazing messages. And I just really needed that during COVID, and I still need it. And we all need it. And step 11 is, it's a culmination. All the steps for me, they all work together. We separate them out, but they all have their own principles. They all have their own promises. They all have their own things, but they're all going to point me towards this relationship with myself, with God, and the world around me. And step 11 for me, when I can sit quietly and listen to another person on how they do it, that teaches me more than anything I could ever ask for. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to this group. Thanks for everybody that puts this thing on. I know what, I kind of have a glimpse as to what goes on with these things, and for fun and for free, you guys just blow me away with the service you do. It's just incredible. You've been able to reach so many people, and COVID is a terrible thing, but we also get blessed through this process as well. There's so many people that I've passed this, Zoom link onto that will text me and they'll call me and they're like, thank you so much. I needed to hear that message. And that proves to me that it still works. This God of our understanding, the we part of the program, Bill starts the first step with we for a reason, because I don't do it alone. I would sit in my first 5 years and I would pray and I would meditate, and I thought I had to do it perfectly. And I would, for 2 hours, I was working, I was waiting tables in Boca Raton, Florida, my spiritual playground. That's what I called it. And everything was a big deal to me in my first 5 years. I don't know if anybody can relate to that, but the sky was always falling. And I just got so much practice with steps 10, steps 4, the 4-step prayer. I pray for people in the bathroom and everybody was offending me, and it was everybody else's fault. And I was always a victim, but I would sit and I would pray and I would meditate. And I would think that I had to be perfect with this thing. And people always used to say to me, don't take it so seriously, and don't take yourself so seriously, and don't take me so seriously, and lighten up, and this and that. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I take everything seriously. I take my program seriously because I took my drinking seriously. So I have to get something bigger than that. And I take my relationship with this power seriously as well. And when I, was brought into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was 25 years old. I was a warden of the lovely state of New Jersey, where I had a case manager. They said that I would always have to take medication. And this is just my experience. This, I wouldn't recommend this for the people. It's just me. It's just my path. And they said that I would always have to be medicated. They said I would never be able to be in society without a case manager. I was a warden of the state. Like I said, I was guilty of beating cops up. I got kicked out of the same university on full scholarship twice in New Jersey. I overdosed more times than I care to admit. I was brought back to life many times. And that was my thinking had a disease. I had this disease in my mind, and it was this donkey mind. And because of step 11, it's taught me to be the thinker of thoughts. And it's taught me that there's a separation there between these thoughts that are grounded in selfish and self-centeredness, these thoughts that are grounded in fear, these thoughts that are grounded in alcoholism, and that I don't have to identify with that today. When Bill does his 10 step, I love when he does his 10 step. He says that he was to test his thinking by the new God consciousness within. That is so freaking cool to me. I'm just like, oh, I can do that. And in my first 5 years, I would get all these resentments, and I would call my sponsor when I was waiting tables. I would go outside. I was smoking cigarettes at the time. And I would go outside and I would smoke a cigarette. I'd be like, and then they did this to me. And then they complained to a manager, and I'm not good enough. And I'm never going to get employee of the month. And my sponsor would say weird things to me. She would say, do you think that's the voice of God or the voice of the disease? And I would say, well, it's clearly not the voice of this loving higher power that saved my life. And I learned how to do that. I learned how to have this built-in tester where, because for me, steps 10 and 11 go together so beautifully, 10, 11, and 12 are my walking around steps. I was able to do inventory at night. And I know, technically it's written in the 11th step in the big book, whatever. I did the inventory at night. And then in the morning, it says, upon awakening, I consider my plans for the day. See, I don't ever want to be alone, especially in my first 5 years. I didn't want to be alone with these diseased thoughts that got me almost dead and kicked out and in so much fear and in the bondage of self. In the first step, I get the bad news. I learned that I'm doomed to an alcoholic death. And it took me 3 years in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous to understand that. I thought I could control it. I thought I was different. When I came into AA at the age of 25, I thought that I was better than everybody else. I thought I was smarter than everybody else. And I also was petrified of people. I was petrified that if I got close to people in AA, they were going to find out how I really felt about myself, which is that I was filled to the brim with self-hatred, filled with self-loathing, but I was masking it with this egomania because I didn't want you to find out how I really felt about myself. That I'm blaming myself for my father leaving me when I'm 9 years old, that I'm blaming myself for all the bad relationships, that somehow it's my fault when all these horrible things start happening. And it's not because, it was my fault because there was something very, very wrong with me from birth. And in step 1, it says to be doomed to an alcoholic death, right? It was the first step, or to live life on a spiritual basis, which is steps 2 through 12. And then he writes something crazy, like they're not always easy alternatives to face. Really? Like if you drank the way I did, that shouldn't be a hard decision. But why it's a hard decision is that if I still have this crazy thing called the obsession of the mind, which points me back to this mental illness that I have, then that's going to be a very difficult decision. One of my favorite friends in AA used to say, when you say doomed to an alcoholic death, how bad is that really? Like, how bad is that, can we negotiate the terms of the death? Like, because I don't want to see God. I don't want to do that. That's corny. That's for weak people. I didn't want to do that in the beginning. I did not want to do that. When I was out there drinking, interestingly enough, and I was pouring so much pop-off vodka into my little body. You know, I was 60 pounds thinner than what I am now, which doesn't really mean anything because you can't see me anyway, but I was skinny, just put it that, I was super skinny. And I was, you know, I was just trying to obliterate myself. And they always put me on suicide watch. You know, I would go to these psych wards and it would piss me off. They would put me in straitjackets, they would medicate the crap out of me. And they would say, they thought that I was trying to kill myself. And I was like, I'm not trying to kill myself. I'm just trying to get drunk. I can't get drunk anymore. It looks to the outside world like I'm trying to commit suicide, but I'm just trying to kill my thoughts. I'm trying to kill the pain. I'm trying to fix the spiritual malady with the wrong kind of spirits, with alcoholic spirits. I have to fix the spiritual malady with the ultimate spirit that gives me life. I didn't know that. I didn't know that, you know, it took me a long time to know that. But when I was out there drinking, you know, and he talks about it in the 12 and 12, he says that we commit the most unnatural sin by the way we drink, because we pour all this alcohol in our bodies and we go against the basic instinct to survive and live. These God-given instincts are that I'm going to survive and I'm going to live. I would come to in the morning in so much pain, and there was always something deep down inside, after every single hangover wore off, after every single fight ended, after all of the pain and the madness went away, every once in a while, I would get this little tiny knowing from inside. And it was a little voice. I would look at myself in the mirror with the sunken in eyes and the sunken in cheeks. And I would say, one day I'm going to stop doing this. Something bigger is out there. I was raised in a non-practicing Jewish family. Everybody's from New York, and my mother and father converted to Buddhism, and they had a Buddhist wedding. I wasn't around for that. It just sounds cool, and I was told that growing up, so I just like to say it. But I thought that I was like going to be some Buddhist or something, and I used to like drink a lot and do other forms of alcohol and meditate for like hours a day, you know, thinking that that's somehow. So I was always seeking. I always knew. But I didn't really understand that in order to get right with this power, I had to get that first step, that I had to fully admit and concede to my innermost self that I don't have the power, that of myself, I'm nothing. And so when I was brought into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, as much fear as I had, I started praying and meditating from that first day to a God that I had no idea. I still don't know, but I really didn't know then. And I just went through the motions. I got brought down to Florida. I started seeing this therapist who was assigned to me. And, you know, she was crazy. She wrote a book. She claimed that like her dog would talk to her and that's how she would give patients advice. I don't know. All I know is God started putting all these people in my life, and she was actually one of my angels. You know, they say, you know, take what you leave and, you know, take what you need and leave the rest. This woman got me down to a baseline and got me off of this cocktail of medication I was on. And then what happened was God put this kick butt little New York Jewish girl sponsor in my life who knew the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, who had a year sober. And I went to the 7 a.m. meeting, and she got up and said that she was an alcoholic, and she had these like Prada shoes on. And I was like, there's no way this chick is an alcoholic. And she looked so happy. You know, she had this fresh skin and glowing look. And I was like, is she on Prozac or what's going on? Like, I didn't understand it at all. And when I saw the steps on the wall, I was like, oh, I already know how to do all this stuff. Like, I've read every single psychology textbook. You know, I had this huge egomania thing going on. But I asked her to sponsor me. And the first thing we did was we got together and read the doctor's opinion after we read, you know, the first two forwards, or where we highlighted certain things. And we read the doctor's opinion, and I had a lot of questions. And what happened when we read the doctor's opinion is that little tiny voice that had come up from the beginning about there's something better out there for me got louder. It started to get louder. And from right there, I started on my second step, came to believe that a power greater than myself was going to restore me to sanity. I get a promise in that step. I get a promise that maybe not right away, but at some point, this power is going to restore me to soundness of mind. And when does that promise get culminated is the 10th step. That's one of our 10-step promises, that we've been restored to sanity. We're placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We haven't even sworn off, you know. And then he tells us other things in the 10th step, like our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. Yes, I read ahead. Okay. If you're wondering, we did the doctor's opinion and then I read the whole rest of the big book because I couldn't wait. And I'm a nerd and I love books and everything. So, I skipped all the steps and I went right to step 10. I was like, this is the cool stuff. This is when I can start practicing meditation again in step 11 and do what I learned in karate and with Buddhism and stuff. And meanwhile, I still had the obsession of the mind and King Alcohol was still running me. And I was too ashamed to admit it. So I spent 3 years battling with God. I spent 3 years asking why me. I spent 3 years in the rooms of AA going home and thinking, I can have one more, nobody will know. And I started lying about my sobriety and experiencing a spiritual death, the likes of which I had never thought was possible. And for the first time ever, I really did want to kill myself. And that was crazy. I looked at myself in the mirror and I just couldn't take it anymore. And this, again, is all part of my 11th step and pausing. I was in so much pain that I just had to surrender. And I just asked God. One morning I woke up, I had to be stopped. I met my match and my prayer went from, dear God, please don't make me get honest. Dear God, please help me get honest. And that little help didn't come from me. That was that same, little quiet, still small voice. He tells us in chapter 4, we agnostics, the second step, he tells us that the fundamental idea of God is deep down within every man, woman, and child. We've been fooling ourselves. And when I read that 4th chapter with my sponsor and I heard other people talking about it, I was like, yes, that's that little voice that was talking to me when I was drinking gallons of pop-off vodka every day. That's that little voice that talked to me when they brought me back to life in the ER. That's that same little, still small voice. How do I get that voice? Like, how do I access that voice? Well, that's what the 4th step is for. And when I did the 4th step, it brought me so much freedom. And I just want to kind of talk about that for a little bit, because step 11 has all these amazing promises, but we have all these amazing promises throughout all the steps. Every single step is pointing me towards this relationship with God. Every single one. The first step, we get a lot of bad news, but every single step starts pointing me towards how to have a relationship with God. I don't have to wait to step 11 to start having a relationship with this power. Second step gives me promises. The 3rd step, the promises are when we sincerely take this position. What position is that? That he is and I'm not. That he is the father and I'm his child. Most good ideals are simple. I start building that archway. He starts giving me all these crazy analogies. And in my home group, my old home group, what we did was in the 11th step, we did this guided meditation and we built an entire inner sanctuary with God with this guided meditation. And we borrowed the language of the 3rd step that he gives us. And I get these other promises, he tells me that I'm reborn in I haven't even done any work yet. And he tells me I'm reborn in that 3rd step because I'm turning my thoughts and my actions over to God. The very same thing that we do in step 11, I start doing it in that 3rd step. And the 4th step, big freedom step, I hear in the rooms, it's so scary and I'm not going to do it. And I'd be dead without the 4th step. The 4th step absolutely saved my life. It continues to save my life. And I love the promises of the 4th step, that he enables me to match calamity with serenity, that I'm going to commence to outgrow fear. Fear, the very thing that's driving me, driven by 100 forms of it. For me, it's 1,000. In the 4th step, I commence to outgrow it. In the 5th step, I get these unbelievable promises. He tells me I start to have a spiritual experience right in step 5, that I'm on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirits of the universe. I could keep going on, and we know 8 and 9 what those promises are. And then in 10, I get the culmination of 2. And then I don't have to worry anymore. I'm okay. I'm just okay. I can just be okay today in fit emotional, spiritual condition. And so it brings me to this 11th step that I'm seeking. And I start seeking in 2, but in 11, he gives me the ultimate excuse to just spend time with this power, the very thing that saved my life. And what we started to do in my home group, or what I started to do, is build this inner sanctuary with God. And he gives us such specific instructions in the big book. And there's such amazing books that I've read. And there's amazing stuff that he gives us in the 12 and 12 and in the language of the heart. There's all kinds of stuff that you can read and you can do. This is just what has worked for me. About 2 years ago to the day almost, and I just want to kind of talk about how this 11th step works in my life. I found out that I was in a relationship for 8 years in AA, and this guy is my best friend. we did AA together. We did meetings together. We worked the program. We shouldered through this thing together, and the relationship ended, and it ended unexpectedly and very quickly. And it was really raw emotional pain. And I had just started this new job. Like, I had just gotten this dream job. And what the 11th step has taught me over the years is to stop and to just sit and to just be still. I've learned how to watch. In step 10, I watch for myself. I watch for various forms of self. I watch for fear. I watch for resentment. You do the whole thing. I become watchful in 10. In 11, I watch for God. And that's what's so amazing about it. And I knew right away, the day after this relationship ended, I'm somebody that likes to get 8 hours of sleep a night. And I didn't that night. I got woken up at 5 a.m., which immediately pissed me off because I was like, I'm going to be terrible today because I'm not getting enough sleep. And I remember hearing this little voice say, I need to talk to you. And I'm not like schizophrenic. That's just, how sometimes I hear these still small voices, these intuitive thoughts. And I went into my inner sanctuary that I had on the other side of the house. And I just sat, and the pain was so acute. I was in so much pain after that relationship ended, and I couldn't even breathe. I couldn't move. And the only thing I'm taught to do in that moment is surrender. And I remember my only prayer was, God, please let me feel your love for me in my heart right now in this moment. I need you. I need you, Father. And that's how I prayed. And then I just sat and I couldn't access it because I was in so much pain and I was crying. And I went into my inner sanctuary. And in my inner sanctuary, I was taught to practice the presence. And what does that look like? What does that mean? Is I sit and I think about, what does it feel like if this creator who's created the universe, who's my creator, who's saved my life, was with me right now, right, sitting here, right in this moment? What does that, and I meditate on that. See, the meditation doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just contemplating. I'm just envisioning my day, that it's just constructive imagination. And I sat there with all my might, and I was in so much pain. And they say that you can't be in fear and faith at the same time. That's not my experience. I was in so much fear that morning. But what came out of that meditation was that my friend was with me, and he was going to walk me out of that pain and into the light, and that for me, it gave me permission to breathe again. I sat and I did this simple, small thing. And I was taught this by my sponsor. And again, I'm a non-practicing Jewish girl, but I started going to church when I was 5 years sober because I wanted more. And then I started getting connected with a rabbi in Fort Lauderdale because I wanted more. And I just have to keep seeking this thing with the desperation of a drowning woman, because I can be at any point. And I did this little psalm that my sponsor taught me, and it's a mantra. And it goes like this. And I just want to invite you, if your mind is racing right now, if you've got a lot going on, I just want to invite you right now in this moment, all of us on this call, to just do what's always worked for me. It says, as we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. I was agitated and doubtful at 5 a.m. And how do I get unchoked? How do I get the channel clear? As I did this little mantra, and it goes like this. You take a deep breath in, and you release it, and you start focusing on faith, and you just do, be still and know that I am God. And you breathe in, and it's a psalm, and that's what it is. And then you breathe in, and each time you drop a word off, and you just repeat it to yourself. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know that. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. 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 And you just keep repeating it. And you just keep repeating that be, and focusing on the very fact that you're alive and you're sober and you don't have any problems in this moment. I promise you. That has always worked for me. And when I kept repeating the be, and I kept saying it over and over and over again, my mind stopped. And as much pain as I was in, and I didn't think I could even go to work that day and start this new job, this little voice came out of nowhere. It came from within me, and I heard it. clear as day. And, we talk about two-way prayer, and I wrote about it after I was doing two-way prayer. And the voice said, and this was just my intuitive thought, I've been trying to get your attention. And I mean, when God wants my attention, he had it in that moment. And I broke out in goosebumps. And then the next thought was, let me handle this. I've got you. You just focus on your sponsees and your job. Let me take this. And I was able to face the day successfully at that point. But more so than that, I knew in that moment I was known by my creator. And this is 2 years ago that I'm having this spiritual awakening. I'd had other ones, but that awakening for me was so profound. It was so, nobody can take that from me. That I've had those experiences in sobriety. I don't have them all the time. I wish I did, but I don't. I go through times where I doubt God and I'm agnostic. But when I had that awakening that morning, the pain was still there. I was just given the courage to face it and to go through it. And by the end of the week, I started getting glimpses of the sunlight of the spirit again, because I was able to go back to that spiritual awakening I had had. And as I went through the day, things started happening, and I paused and I went back to the B. I went back to how I prepare in the morning. Step 11 tells me to prepare, and it teaches me how to execute for the day. Plan and prepare my day. I consider my plans for the day. 24 hours, that's all I get. And I pray for people, and I ask God to divorce my thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from selfishness and self-pity and victimization. I love how he puts that in there, because I'm always such a victim. It's like he knew that I had to especially pray, that self-pity gets removed. It's like the first one, right? In the big book or something. And I pause when agitated or doubtful. And then what does he tell us to do? He says to ask, which we know means to pray. Ask for the right thought or action. Where do I ask for the right thought or action? It's step 3. Step 3, I turn my thoughts and my actions over to God. I turn them over to his care, to his protection, my will and my life, my thoughts and my actions. And then at 11, he reinforces it, that I'm pausing and I'm asking for the right thought or action. And that then, no matter how much pain I'm in, I'm freed up. I'm freed up to be one with my creator again, but more importantly, I'm freed up to be with you, and to be of service to you, and to be helpful and to be useful. And the pain gets less and less and less the more God I let shine out. The pain starts getting removed. And then one day I turn around and the pain's not there anymore. And I think that's probably why he put that in there, Bill, little clever Bill over there in the 12 and 12, saying pain is the touchstone of all spiritual growth, which used to piss me off when I would read it, but it's true. But it's true. I mean, the most painful experiences. And then after that, I would love to tell you that after that, everything got great. And I skipped along and I frolicked in the sunlight of the spirit, because I had this amazing spiritual awakening. And I knew that I was known by, that didn't happen. In Bill's story, he has such a bright white light burning bush experience. And then on the next page, he says it's soon blotted out by worldly clamors and pomp and worship of other things. I have to continue. In step 10, I have to continue. In 11, I have to keep seeking. And I don't stay sober on yesterday's sobriety. It's just not how it works for me. I have to continue to be fed. About a year ago, I went through another huge life change. I mean, it wasn't just COVID. It was just, I got plagued by self-will that I had never had. I had this beautiful life in South Florida, and it was really sober, and it got boring. Everything just got so good that I got bored. And then COVID happened, and I just had this little itch. I just wanted to, meet my, the relationship ended, and then I wanted to meet my soulmate. Oh, and then what I wanted to mention about that is, because of step 11 specifically and forgiveness, that relationship has turned back into the beautiful friendship that it always was. And I never thought that I would be able to forgive and to move on and to have compassion and all these things that the steps point us to do. But he's still my best friend. He's still my family. And I called him earlier to pray with me before this call, because that's what we do. And he said to me, I'm meeting with a sponsee right now, which is so amazing to me. I didn't get resentful. It's not oh, I need you to pray with me. It's that's what we do. That's what we do here. And it just kind of blew me away. I was that's so amazing. But yeah, I mean, he's my best friend, and I took the time I needed to do work on it and retreat and all that. But a year ago, what happened was I I started getting like, I want to move and I want to leave Florida. And I wound up meeting this other man that I fell head over heels in love with, and he wasn't in the program. And I wound up moving, and I moved to New Orleans. And, I'm still working through if that was self-will. I'm sure it was. It turned out to be pretty yucky. And I went through a lot of pain with that. And I love the part in the 11th step where he says that it's not likely that we're going to be inspired at all times. I was walking around telling everybody it's such a God thing, and I sat and I prayed and I meditated, and he calls it unconscious rationalizations. Like, be quiet, Bill. Like, I want to do what I want to do. And that's what it was. It was an unconscious rationalization. And I was sharing it with the people in my support group that would be happy for me. I definitely wasn't sharing it with the women that would put their foot up my you-know-what, because they were probably going to tell me not to do it. I don't want to hear what they have to do. I'm 11 years sober now. I make my own decisions. I don't know that this is happening. I don't know self-will's creeping back in. And you know what? It's okay. It's okay because I didn't drink. It's okay that I'm dishonest. It's okay that I act out in my character defects. These are the things that continue to prompt me to turn back to the power. I'm never going to be the power. I have to strive for the perfect objective. And in step 11, when I'm listening and I'm still, and I'm practicing the presence of my higher power, I get these weird little whispers like, give this back to me. You've taken it back. It's not your turn right now. Not yet. But when I was sitting quietly and I was listening, I had already made up my mind what I wanted. And my will had become so intense that I wasn't going to hear what the power was saying. I was already, and I was justifying it by what had happened in the other relationship. But again, all this is going on without me knowing. Now, what I know today is that right now I'm sitting in New York City. This has always been my dream, is to live here. It literally, I just moved in, like my stuff's not unpacked. I'm sorry, but that's a mess back there, whatever. I wound up during COVID getting hired at this job that I had prayed for. If it's your will, you always tack that on at the end so that you're safe. I prayed for this job, and God is concerned with who I am, not the destination. And he wasn't going to give me this job before my soul was ready to receive it. And that's just how my relationship with him works today. And when he said, now, I got it. And I wound up moving here. I was able to segue out of New Orleans, and I was able to walk through all that pain. And now I'm walking around Central Park, and I'm walking around weeping, because I've been here a week, you guys. I have been here a week, and I've already been to all these meetings here, and the meetings here are on fire. They're on fire. This is where it started. Bill was a stockbroker. He's over there. There's so much stuff. There's general service and the grapevine, and everything's here. And I'm like walking around, and I'm like, oh, I already know people here. I was greeted by A when I got here. People were calling me. Like, I can't escape you guys. And it's just so unbelievable to me that we're coming out of this pandemic. The pandemic's going on again. I moved here for work, and now they're like, by the way, you can continue to work from home. And I'm like, now I'm in this apartment. Like, what? I'll just go to Broadway. It's fine. Whatever. Not to perform, but to be in the audience. And it's just amazing to me that even though I messed up, what I want to say is this about that, because I think I'm probably almost out. Am I almost out of time? I'm not really sure, but whatever. Okay, cool. What I want to say is, I used to think that if I took my will back and I was going to mess up, and I was going to be unloved by this power, and I was going to be forgotten because, God forbid, I do something wrong. So I'm such a perfectionist, and I take myself so seriously. And I did mess up. I messed up bad. I messed up real bad. I took this loving, beautiful life I had in South Florida. I was in this pocket of recovery. Everybody's doing the deal, and I'm shouldering through this thing. And I said, I'm bored. I want something else. And I turned away and I left. And I went through a lot of pain. And like a good parent, he let me go through that pain. He said, you're going to go through some pain. And I said, okay. And he said, one day you're going to help somebody with this. And I said, okay. And then what happened is he just brought me over to here, to New York City, when he saw fit, not in my time, but when it was his time. He brought me over here. And I learned from that even if I mess up, even if I act out in these character defects, even if there's periods, and he writes about it in the 11th step, in the 12 and 12, where I'm going to be plagued by periods of agnosticism, where I don't even want to pray. I don't want to talk to God, because I'm a human being. I'm allowed to be a human being in this thing. And it's okay, because he doesn't go anywhere. He's right here, right now, in this moment. not yesterday, not the future, not what am I going to have, what flavor ice cream am I going to have later, which I'm always worried about. It's like my big problem today. There's 4 ice cream places around me in this neighborhood, which are, anyway, it's distracting. But he's right here, right now, in this moment. And as much as I might have messed up, I never am not known by that power. If I want it, if I seek it, he says he provides what we need if we keep close to him and perform his work well. Now, how am I going to perform his work well if I'm not practicing my 11th step? I'm not. I'm going to do all kinds of crazy stuff with sponsees. I'm going to be carrying the disease. I've done that. I've gone through that. And it's okay. It's all okay. As long as I don't drink and I continue to seek in this 11th step, I get all these amazing promises, which lead me to the ultimate promise, having had a spiritual awakening. Bill tells us he's guaranteed to us. And I'm friends with people in the program who don't practice having this relationship with God or the tree or whatever you want to call it. And they use a group of drunks and they're agnostics and they're sober 30, 40 years and they're happy and they're helping others and it works for them. I get my happiness. It's just for me, my joy, my peace and my serenity, which are so priceless to me today when I'm in the sunlight of the spirit. And the quickest way I get in the sunlight of the spirit is by practicing this 11th step, sitting quietly when in doubt, waiting, pausing, watching for God, and then helping his kids in 12. That's all I have tonight. Thank you so much.